The Garmin Venue 3 comes in two different sizes. So right here I have the smaller Garmin Venue 3S with 41mm, and right here I have the bigger version, the Venue 3 with 45mm. And today I will show you how they look on my wrist, how they look off of my wrist, and we'll cover the differences that you will find in these two smartwatches. And the first thing that I would like to mention is that both watches, the Venue 3 and the Venue 3S, cost the same amount. Both come in at a price of 500 euros over here in Germany, and it's important to know that they come with the exact same features and you're not missing out on anything if you get a smaller or the bigger version. So let's take a look at each watch and how they look off of my wrist. So right here I have the two different sizes in my hand and on my wrist. And it's pretty obvious that you get two different sizes. Now, even though both watches may have the same features spec-wise, and if it comes to the battery life, both watches are different. If we put the watches right next to each other, you see that the Venue 3S has a much bigger screen. It's 1.4 inches compared to 1.2 inches on the 3S. We also get a different weight. It's 46 grams with the strap on the Venue 3 and only 40 grams on the Venue 3S, but in all honesty, you don't really feel the difference at all. Something that is definitely worth mentioning is that you barely feel the smaller version during your workouts, your sleep, or if it's just trying to slide your hand into your pocket. The 45mm is a bit more noticeable, but really not that much more. You see both watches have the same height, which is great, but since the display and case are larger, you can still feel the difference at night and during your runs. If you take a peek at the side of the watches, you see that we have 3 physical buttons, and they all have the same size, just the straps are different. The Venue 3 has a 22mm silicone strap with a quick release feature, whereas the Venue 3S only has an 18mm silicone strap. So that's the first difference right here. And the second one is the length of the strap. The smaller one goes on wrist somewhere around 110 to 175mm, and the bigger one on 135 to 200mm. Just for context, I have a 19cm wrist, which is about 7.5 inches, and I would tend to go with the 45mm one, as this one just looks much better on my wrist. The 41mm is pretty small, and I would go with this one if your wrist is somewhat around 14 to 17 centimeters, and everything above, I think the bigger version will be a good choice. That's just my standpoint, and I know everyone has its own size preferences. I also get a lot of questions about the lug-to-lug size, which is this right here. Now, the bigger one basically covers my whole wrist, whereas on the smaller one, I still have big gaps between the side of my wrist and the watch. So I try to be as precise as possible and got 47mm lug-to-lug size on the Venue 3S and 52mm on the Garmin Venue 3. Now, as for the colors, the Venue 3 only comes in two different ones, which are black and white, whereas the Venue 3S comes in 5 different ones: gold gray, black, silver gray, golden rose, gold, and ivory. So you got a much bigger variety right here. So as I said in the beginning of the video, the Venue 3 and the Venue 3S share the same features, but when it comes to the amount of information that you see on your display, there are quite a few differences, and the biggest one is probably the notifications. So first up, the amount of notifications that you see on your display is different. On the Venue 3, you get to see a little bit more, and then when we head into the messages, you can read a lot more on the bigger version, and that's the same with the emails, WhatsApp messages, or anything else that you get on those watches. Next, when we head into the sports section, you basically see one more activity that you can select. On the Venue 3S, you can barely see it, and in the app section, you have the same problem. You get one more app on the Venue 3, but if you are really good, you can still select the little part that you can see on the 3S. The good thing is that you see the same amount of information in all of your health metrics, and that includes your respiration rate, your heart rate, SpO2, HRV status, sleep and stress, and your sleeping coach. You even get the same amount on your weather widget. Now, when we take a look into the shortcut settings, you see that for each shortcut, you see a little bit more of the available options on the Venue 3. In your control settings, you will find the same thing, and if you have some longer words and titles like your body battery, the Venue 3S has to scroll left and right in order to capture the whole thing, whereas on the Venue 3, you have everything on one screen most of the time. If you want to edit your app, you will see much more on the 4th app, which is almost invisible on the Venue 3S. But you know, guys, these two watches really have a lot in common, and most of the apps and settings, you will get the same amount of information, and the biggest difference is really just the messages and email section. So just like the Garmin 265 and 265S, these two right here are very similar, and the major difference is just the size of the watch. So if you're thinking about getting these two watches, you really don't have to worry too much about the informations and only check if you're getting the right size. Everything that I didn't mention today, all the tiles and apps and whatever, they're the same on both watches. Just the text and icons on the Garmin Venue 3S are just a little bit smaller, but you're not missing out on anything. Now at the end, if your wrist is close to my size and bigger, definitely get the 45mm version, and if it's smaller, somewhat around 14 to 17 centimeters, I would tend to go with the 41mm version. And guys, there we have it. Now I also covered the Garmin Venue 3 in a separate video. Just click that video right here to get right to it. And I guess with that one being said, I will see you in the next one. Peace.